Far Sector, issue 6. N.K. Jemisin writing with Jamal Campbell on the art. This was one I was worried about, just in the sense that I was struggling when this was on a more monthly schedule to remember details.
I think it did officially switch to bi-monthly, right?
It did. It's been longer than that because of everything. But
thankfully they introduced recap pages.
They kind of did, yeah, where it's kind of like this weird meta thing where Joe kind of is explaining it to the dude and then sort of like says, no, it's not for you, it's for the new people. And sort of looks at it as almost.
Yeah, because he goes, I know this, I'm right here. She goes, hush, this is for the new people.
Yes.
Right.
So they're having fun with it, which is nice, and maybe they realised that 2 months between issues, and I mean, this could just be a one-time thing. Maybe they just slotted this in last minute for this.
Page last time.
Oh, did we?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, there you go. See, it's been a while. I can't remember.
No, I remember talking about how unusual it was last time because DC Comics traditionally don't have the recap pages.
Yeah. Right. So, yeah, we get this story here of her feeling lonely, Joe's feeling lonely, and her the friend she's kind of made on the planet essentially offers to come over and have sex with her to just basically release some tension. And she's like, I mean, that's nice and all, but no, I'm good. Like,
I get the feeling that they probably have done in the past. Like, this wasn't the first.
Well, no, because they've brought up that they had a slight thing when she first got there.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Right. And so, but this is when I also realized that, or I had forgotten it until this issue, that they are purely digital beings, because there's a part where she hops into her communication device to ride along with her. And she's just data. So them having that relationship and stuff, like where Joe's like, it kind of wasn't the same because it wasn't caring. It was just like a fun type thing. And there's commentary there that I need to dig out more. But, you know.
This is a dense book in terms of its themes.
Oh, yeah, because Marth comes over and wants to talk to her. And, of course, she's pissed at Marth because Marth's the one who gave the okay to the security forces to shoot at the protesters, which...
Oh, the first 2 panels of this issue.
Oof. Again, it'd been a while since I read this, so I wasn't even really thinking about it. It wasn't until I started reading it that I remembered what the last issue was and kind of went, oh, geez, all right, this is timely.
But this also shows how much of a problem stuff like this is when that's, I feel, what Jemison's, her commentary to this, right? Is like, this is sadly evergreen.
Yeah.
Stuff like this could happen, right? And that it just happened that it got released on this week where tensions are super, super high.
It's true. And this is not unique to this. Me and Pete have been doing 6 Feet Under as a Patreon exclusive review. And there was like a line of dialogue in the last episode that we did just this past week. That hit incredibly hard this week.
Yeah, so, and that just, I think, shows the craft that's going into this book. Like, whatever this is, you know, I mean, I know it's Young Animal, but I feel like it's also part of the greater DC. Like, we've gotten hints of Joe before now.
There's acknowledgement that John Stewart exists in this issue.
Yeah,
there is. Yeah, she's. I mean, not only that, she has like Gundam. I think that was.
I assumed that was Gundam. So yes.
Yeah.
But I wasn't
anyways,
confident.
It's just. Sure. I felt the same thing as I read this. Like, I was going, oh, this is uncomfortable, but it's the uncomfortable because, like, no, there's a problem that needs to be dealt with. If we're putting this in stories, and it just seems like that's part of it. That
it's uncomfortable that this was written long before,
right?
A couple of weeks.
Well, that's kind of that's the point.
No, exactly, and it's uncomfortable that it got to this stage already, and we all know this.
Yeah, I mean that's the point. This is not a surprise. This has been in stories for decades and decades, and is just as relevant as it was the first time it was put in a story as it is now. So we have this, but anyway, to get to the gist of the issue here is that Marv shows up. She doesn't want to see him, and he's got flowers because he's been told he's done a bit of research, and that's what men do for women on Earth is they bring them flowers.
Yeah, he didn't pick the best flowers though because
no.
He goes, oh, the plant's dying, which is probably good because it's toxic and preys on large mammals.
Right.
Yeah. I kind of also got that as like a weird kind of like just his opinion on like flowers in general is that because technically whenever you've picked a flower it's already starting to die. Technically, the death is already going.
Right.
Yes.
But there's also an entire culture of plant-based individuals on this planet too.
This
So
is true.
that whole part of them being toxic, I think that also shows his bias that they feed on large, mammals and whatnot.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so he's there and basically says that he's going to resign because of what he did, and she doesn't really believe him. But then she checks the the news, and
he's already made his statement.
Yeah, he's already done it. So because she's like, I'll believe it when I see it. But then she checks the news. He's like, oh, he's already put a statement. Okay, it's happening. And finds out that, okay, this has kind of been made while he's on switch off. Because again, remember, everyone's got this, the emotion chip, the emotion exploit.
Right. The emotion exploit.
And he takes switch off, which lets him feel his feelings for a number of times. And she refers this to being high. But as he quite rightly points out, it's not really that. It's more like, I mean, maybe it's more of a rush because he doesn't usually have these feelings, but it's actually more that he gets to feel what he really feels during these days. Because one of my favorite little details character-wise here was that she's sort of in her head narrating as she's talking to him, and she's sort of like assessing how he feels and what he feels about this. And she's like, okay, so he's saying a lot of the right things, but it doesn't seem like he actually feels guilty. But then a couple of pages later, he says something like, so when does the pain of like doing the wrong thing go away? And she's like, oh shit, there's the guilt. Like she's like, it's almost like she has to like take him a bit more seriously because okay, he actually feels guilty. I can't just brush this off.
And it's him acknowledging that we have to remember, us and her, that the emotion exploit, as much as this is what we know him as the standard, that's not his default state. That's him on switch off taking this drug is actually his natural state. And this is being repressed. So it's as much as this is illegal and he's taking these drugs to do this, he's actually trying to be it's trying to gain freedom essentially.
Yeah, and notably what this does is that in his decision making, he doesn't have compassion, he doesn't have empathy, he doesn't have any of these things. It's not until he takes the drug later and then sort of thinks about what he's done that he starts to actually feel the weight of it and what's actually happened. Because one of the things that he even says here is like, how do you cope with this all the time? How do you deal with all these feelings? How, like, and I always feel so lonely when I'm on this drug. How do you deal with this being the only person? And she actually accepts his advances when she didn't with the other one, because she's basically like, well, this is more mutual because he also feels lonely. He's also getting something out of this. Mike's gone. And so it becomes this moment here. So they have this romantic beat, and this is when we see the Jon Stewart like bobblehead or whatever it is in the
it's a cool little figure that I would definitely own.
Yeah.
So what I was gonna say though, there's an emotional aspect to it, right? Where there wasn't with the digital her friend. Right here, there's a warmth to him right now.
I mean, I don't know if it's me. I mean, obviously, it's representing these digital beings as actually fully fledged beings, but I don't know if there's maybe like a metaphor here.
No, but that's what I mean. Though is they don't feel because they are. Well, like sure, they have the emotional exploit, right? Like.
Well, yeah, but what I'm getting at is here, even though they're presented as being living beings, these digital beings, I wonder if there's a metaphor here or an analogy here for, like, not just accepting like a digital like substitute for the real thing.
Right.
I get where you're coming from. I don't think that's the case. I think for me at least, these digital beings are real, right? They're like full.
Well, that's why I prefaced it with that, as that part doesn't really make it line up. But
that's why there's stuff here that I'm sure I need to dig deeper at before I try to, you know what I mean, before I come up with a theory. But her and Marth hooking up versus her and her, who she lives with, her friend, who I should know the name, but just the name's in this.
Pillage?
There's too many months between us.
There's too much going on, right? So, but just the fact there that there's an emotional thing, whereas with her one friend, it's kind of, it's a fun thing, we can hook up, but it's almost like she's programmed just to do that.
It's like, it's like a pleasantry. It's like, would you like to have sex on your way in?
It's
okay.
The same thing that Marth says about his decisions. He takes switch off to reflect on them, to actually understand them. But when he's making the decisions, it's just logic and
the spreadsheet,
the pros and cons.
It's cold. It's
when Tillage offers the sex here, it's very much this. Well, you got tension? Let's just sort that out. This is what you do. There's no connection.
Right.
Yeah,
that's what she's missing here.
It's kind of like in
in
Demolition Man, right? Where well, no, when Sandra Bullock and Sylvester Stallone, right? he puts the moves on her, and she goes, "Wait, no, not like that. You mean fluid transmission? No one does that anymore." And then she tries to hook him into the VR thing, and it overloads his brain.
Of course, that's where Matt went. Obviously,
I'm not sure that's quite the same as this, to be honest with you, Matt.
Obviously, some of what the issue is saying, or what the story's metaphor here is the idea that he's making these decisions when he has no feelings of any kind. He's just this cold, calculated thing. And the sad part is I almost, and maybe this story's going to do interesting things with this. So I don't want to this is not even a judgment so much as just a bit of critical thinking along with it. Is that's almost inaccurate, because the problem is that the people who are world leaders who make these choices aren't actually cold and calculated in the sense that they're doing the most logical thing. The problem is that they do have emotional bias. It's just that it's biased in the opposite way. It's this bias where they're they're making choices against.
So Marth's doing the most scientific. Well, this is how you put down this is how you do that. You deal with a crowd this way, just because, right? Whereas if you add empathy to it and him looking at how they're feeling, right, that's how it's supposed to go. But in the real world, you have people going like, well, no, what's best for me?
Yeah.
Right? There's a self-centered. It's not what's best for everyone. It's what's best for them.
No, I think the metaphor does work to a point where there is this cold, inhumane, not considering the people's feelings. When people in power make choices that lead to people's deaths or belittles people or discriminates against people, it is this cold thing. But they're not necessarily just robots making choices either, though. It's more of a bias or a lack of empathy in another way. So it's not a perfect one-to-one comparison, but there may be something in this story that even plays with that later as well. This idea that it's not the exact same as what we have on Earth. It is different. But there is definitely a bit of a comparison there with the idea of just not caring about the people and just doing the cold thing.
I kind of love that we're only halfway through this book and it feels so dense and there's so much story to explore. But because it is so dense, I'm not worried that it's not got enough time. You know what I mean? In 6 issues, I'm like, no, we can cover plenty in 6 issues at this pace.
Yeah. It could be a concern if maybe we wouldn't get enough otherwise, but so obviously, basically, they part ways morning after, and Joe gets a call to go and what is she looking at here? So yes, there's basically a disturbance. They think they've figured out what killed someone from the earlier issues, and we get the reveal of basically these beings that are supposed to be long dead from the cloud cratocracy, if I'm saying that properly. And these are things that are supposed to basically have been wiped out. And this is maybe the part where the gap between issues, but I almost want to go back and reread the first 6 now before issue 7 comes out.
So I remembered that when the 3 different races that live in the city got there was people already there, and then those people kind of pitted them against each other, so they all got together and rose up against them, and so they're supposed to be long gone. Yet they found there's this technology of these mechs that are there and they're active, so clearly they're not gone. And maybe, from what I took, maybe they're still stoking the fires of these, to put them against each other.
It could be. And there was a great line about when Joe mentions to a friend who's in her headset at this point, being like, didn't you wipe all these out for revenge for that occupation of your ancestors, decades, centuries ago, millennia ago, however long it was? And I go, it wasn't revenge, it was insurance, so they'd never attack us again. And she goes, yeah, you need to get that money back on that insurance policy.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, that did not go so well, did it?
Yeah. So we end off in a big sort of fight cliffhanger where she's taking on a bunch of these droids. They almost look like alien robots, I guess, would be the best description, because they look, if you imagine kind of the aliens from War of the Worlds, not as big, but those big sort of walking ship things, more like 8 foot tall than 100 foot tall.
It also kind of reminded me of an alien version of Ed 209.
Sure.
Yeah, they have arms, their guns and whatnot. Very mech looking.
The arms are also legs as well.
Right.
They kind of run on both depending on the situation.
Yeah, I feel like the biggest problem with this book now actually is just that there was so much history and mythology thrown at us in the first couple of issues, which at this point, I need to refresh on. It's been too long.
Yeah.
You're not wrong.
So that is probably the biggest thing going against it. But it is very rich in its themes and its stories, and when it kind of just tries to focus on one of those details, it tends to do a really good job with it, and tends to raise a lot of interesting questions, and kind of prods at current social issues through the prism of science fiction, which is what good science fiction typically does. So, yeah, I mean, there you go. It's pretty solid. Obviously, Campbell's art's great. It's because it has been.
It's fantastic.
Without saying, it's
Yeah. All right. What are you giving it, Matt?
I'm gonna give this an 8.5.
Car?
Yeah, 8.5 from me too.
Yeah, I'll concur. 8.5. There you go.
Boom. Nailed it.